Kenny talking about she just got off the plane. Off what plane? I didn't know she was going on. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Supposed to be up there on Thursday, I think.
Yeah, now that's a lot.
Hey. Put on my house cleaning stuff all over the place. How you doing, honey? Yeah. I think this should be on. Wait. Okay, it's working.
It looks nice.
There.
This was pretty straight look. Or is it really tilted? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Hey, so how's this going?
Then we're like, they're definitely, look at that.
Get this one. That was done. That was done. That was done. Hey, honey bunny.
Well, shalom, everyone.
I'm so through.
Happy Sabbath, Sabbath peace to everyone. Yes, sir. All right. Hope everyone had a good week. Now it's time to worship the Most High on His day that He sanctified. We're going to stand, face Jerusalem. Good to see everyone. 2 Chronicles chapter 6, verse 37. Yet if they bethink themselves in the land whither they are carried captives, and turn and pray unto thee in the land of their captivity, saying, we have sinned, we have done amiss, we have dealt wickedly. And if they return to thee with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their captivity, whether they had carried them captives, and pray towards their land, which thou gavest unto their fathers, and towards the city which thou hast chosen, and toward the house which I have built for thy name, then hear thou from the heavens, even from thy dwelling place, their prayer and their supplication, and maintain their cause, and forgive thy people which have sinned against thee. Yes. Father Elohim, we thank you for this day, the day that you set apart from any other day, the day that you made for man, the day that you made your son Yahshua Lord over. We just thank you for everything we did from last Shabbat to this Shabbat. We thank you for the protection. We thank you for the security. We thank you for the food, the clothing, the shelter, and the help. For we know that you're the source and provider of all, and we give you thanks. And we ask you to continue to watch over us from this Shabbat to next Shabbat. For we know there's many brothers and sisters who went through trials and tribulations throughout the week. Some sickness in their body, some health issues, some financial issues. Some lost their jobs. Some are looking for jobs. Some lost loved ones throughout the week. And we ask that you comfort them during that time of need. And Father Elohim, we pray for those who are not able to be here, who would like to be here. Pray for those who are traveling to be here. And we ask that you send your Ruach to them, to let them know that you're there with them, that you're ministering to them. You bring it into remembrance your word. We intercede for those brothers and sisters who are going through trials and tribulations. But we know that your will be done. And Father Elohim, as we worship you on your day, as we go over your word on your day. If there's anything that we're doing that's blocking from you hearing us, that's causing you to turn your face, we repent of those things so that we can line up with you and your word. And if there's anything that we're doing that we're just not aware of, we ask that you bring those things to us so that we may repent and turn back to your law, statutes, and commandments. But Father Elohim, we know that this world is going through a fear right now. But we know that if we stay righteous according to your word, we shall fear none. For we know that you protect those who are righteous. And Father Elohim, as this word gets darker, use us to be a light unto the nations, to show them the right way. Because you bring judgment on this world for your glory, so that man may repent, to know that you exist. And it's not by our might and our will, but it's by your strength and your mercy. And this we ask in your son Yahshua's name. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Yes, Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Well, for those who weren't here for part one, biblical manuscripts, we discussed, topics and is it important about his word and how his word gonna keep getting attacked. Certain things where we deal with the Tanakh. How was they written? I had a young man that was at my facility, and he was asking the very same questions. So you following a book that's written by a man? I follow my own heart. I don't need a book to tell me how to live my life. And the comments he was making, I understood where he was coming from, where using his own understanding, coming from a 16, 17-year-old young man. And he's at my facility, meaning that he broke some laws in the state of Texas. And as I told him, I said, well, yes, it's a book, but you got to realize that what we hold to, that this book was written by a holy man moved by the Spirit of the Most High, which separate majority of the human beings on this earth. And his word will be preserved, and therefore you can understand as you read this word that it will direct your steps, for you will know what's really right and wrong. Because my wife and I one time was at this store, and this guy came to me and asked, you know, I didn't really know who he was, but he recognized me back from high school, and we're talking about this basketball game I played, and so he still remember this game. He said, so what are you doing now? And my mindset was like, well, I'm not playing ball no more. He was like, he was kind of shocked. And he asked, well, why not? You know, I told him about, you know, I have to adjust to the word of the Most High. I don't want to go against his Sabbath day and playing sports on his Sabbath day. And then he kind of looked at me, and then he made a comment like, well, me and God has our own relationship. He not in my business, and I stay out of his.
Whoa.
I said, okay. Then, you know, he started talking, saying how he used to do this and used to that. He just asked a question. I asked him, so how you know what's right and wrong? He kind of stopped and said, well, that's a good question. The reason I'm saying it, because, you know, you don't have a standard. You know, so when I got told that young boy that was at my facility, I said, you know, it would say in my word, I don't want you here. Says I want to do what's right. Sounding like your ethnicity, what tribe you're from. And I want you out of my world. Since you say everybody do what's right in their own heart, would that be right? He kind of paused and said, no, that won't. I said, well, hold on. You just said do what's right in your own heart. So whose standard now? How you gonna tell me what's right if I want to take you out? Whose standard you going by? Because that's my standard now. So that kind of had him in a puzzle where like, well, I said, well, hold on, you can't say what you just said now. So you know it's a standard that we got to follow. So in part one, is this who authority, who made the standard? Who authority? And you kind of see where people go with, and this authority here, and what we hold to with these scriptures, we understand this is our authority. This is the rules that we go by. And this authority going to be attacked on multiple angles. And I just want us to understand as we view these here, that we know how to come back on some of these people I'm going to talk about on this part here, because there's a lot of information that deal with biblical manuscripts. As on part one, we kind of went over a general thing about, you know, we talk about the text of receptors, go in more detail about that, the canon, talk about the majority text, the minority text. What about all the textual variances? Are there any originals? What we talk about now, are there any original manuscript today? No. And we understand why not. They were on a papyrus, right? We say those the that's why they start making what? Start making copies, because papyrus is a plant-based material and that deteriorate, right? So, but then we understand that we got copies of copies of copies of copies. Then the next question, well, how do we know those copies are accurate? And then that's where we understand who the Most High is, and he still even naturally blow things out the water that there's other parts of the world can't even understand. Like we say, what's the number one selling book of all time? The Bible, right? It's just nothing even compared to it, right? So when we start talking about manuscripts and all these things, it's going to be ridiculous on that. And remember this here, 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. As we kind of dived in last week, 2 weeks ago. 2 Timothy 3 verses 16 and 17.
2 Timothy 3, verse 16. All scripture is given by inspiration of Yah, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of Elohim may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works.
So we understood this here. It's inspired by who? By the Most High, by Yah. And this is where we hold where the authority come from. As we seen in the scripture where we talk about with Moses, he always let people know he the one behind that authority, so this is who you follow. And we saw that when he made the mountain quake, and he told Moses to come up to the mountain. And when he told him these things here, he said, for people may know that what? That I spoke to you. Then when you speak, it won't be like, oh, this is what who said. It's what Moses said. Everybody knew Moses was a prophet of who? Of the Most High. So he spoke on behalf of the Most High. Remember this right here we talked about. We said, Yahuwah's work of preservation is as important as his initial work of what? Inspiration. As he inspired, but I mean, well, yeah, he inspired, but now, you know, well, he also want to preserve his word as well. Because this is the point that we have to understand, that it's from generation to generation. All right? And we're going to talk about some people who going to knock at the door of this right here. And they actually lost their faith. They actually atheists now because of certain things that's written in the scriptures that they hold that, well, these manuscripts are now copies, and how we know these copies hasn't been corrupted. So these copies now copying things that's already been corrupted. So now, since we don't have the original, they like in a. So, and again, take it from the basis of what they're going with, it can make sense. But when you actually go more in detail and you actually search it out, there's nothing new. That's why the Most High, he leave nuggets in his word for us to search out.
Okay.
There we go. This one of the guys right here. His name is Bart Ehrman. Now, I've been dealing with Bart, been listening to certain things with him for years now. And for a little thing with Bart, Bart is one of the most decorated New Testament scholars of our day. He was an instructor at Moody Bible Institute. Anybody heard of that in Chicago? Yeah. He also was got his master's in theology and from Princeton. He went to Wheatland College as well, did some more, got his master's in that as well. And he so-called was under this guy by the name of Bert Master, one of his instructors who's recognized as the 21st century, the most decorated New Testament scholar, and he studied under him. So you got to realize a lot of people use his work as a lot of Muslims, a lot of agnostics. They go to Bart Ehrman because they say, here go a guy who used to be a Christian, and now he's a what? He's an atheist. Because he hold to that, why should one think that Elohim performed a miracle inspiring the words of the Bible if he didn't perform the miracles of what? Preserving the words of the Bible. And what we just talked about the previous. This is the reason why that guy lost the faith. And we're going to get in more detail about what his comments are. The words are not, why he feel they're not preserved. Also, he made a comments like this here. I don't know if you can see that, Nick.
Yeah. Given the circumstance that Elohim didn't preserve the words, the conclusion seemed inescapable to me that he hadn't gone to the trouble of inspiring them.
Same thing, right? So since he didn't preserve them, and guess what? That means he didn't even what? He didn't even inspire them. That show the key again why it's so important. Y'all work of preservation is as important as the initial work of inspiration. Because it's like, you do one thing, And now you allow people to corrupt your word and do this to your word, and we hold to that he's what? He's all powerful. He's this, he's that. And you got a guy like Bert Ehrman who going around got a book called Misquoting Jesus as his book is titled. Throwing a lot of people off their faith. That's why I want the young people here. I want them to recognize, how do you answer one like this here? Yes, ma'am.
Can you put that same argument with other historical texts that may have been lost or copied and preserved?
And like you just said that's what we're going to, that's why, and you're absolutely correct. Yes. If you put this with the word, as you just said, let's say the Greco-Roman era, then that's why I said about our manuscripts that we have, that and you compare it to the other, say, classical writers in the day, it doesn't compare. You have to use that same, because then it won't hold any water whatsoever, such as, Socrates, Homer, Alexander, anyone from any past, whatever, you have to erase that history completely out. You have to erase it, but they're not going to do that.
Sorry, Gerald, I might have missed this last week. This guy, Bart, or whatever his name is, Bert, why did he make the leap that the Most High doesn't preserve his own word?
We're gonna
We're
get
gonna
it.
talk about
We're gonna
this.
get it exactly.
Get it.
Well, we're gonna. The reason why. Let me see. If you're gonna read it a little bit, let me see. I'm gonna give. I want to hear his own quote. Now that's gonna be kind of hard. I don't know. You can read that.
You want to read that?
I can read it though. You want me to?
I
Okay.
tried. What did the Bible originally say? It is one thing to say that the original were inspired, but the reality is that we don't have the originals. So saying they were inspired doesn't help me much unless I can reconstruct the originals. Not only do we not have the originals, we don't have the first copies of the originals. We don't even have copies of the copies of the originals, or copies of the copies of the copies of the originals. What we have are copies made later, much later. In most instances, they are copies made many centuries later. And these copies all differ from one another in many thousands of places.
That's why he's saying that we don't even have the originals, and we don't even have the first of the copies. We don't even have the first of the copies of those copies. We don't have the copies of the copies of those copies. And they are centuries later. So then he's saying that, and they also what? And these copies all differ from one another in many thousands of places. So that's where his mindset comes from. We're like, man, I thought this was inspired. How you got all these, we don't have any originals, and then we got these copies, and these copies we look at from that original state, they 100 years later, and they got differences within themselves. So that what made him say, well, you know what, I gotta move on. That was his reason. And then not just that, he has another whole, and I think I put it on here. He's a historian as well. And his whole view on what got him was this thing called suffering. And I heard his whole little reasoning behind when he did his thing on suffering, how, and the main thing we got to realize is here, when you're dealing with sin, you want to hold on to sin, you got to blame somebody. And you gotta let go of that person who directs sin. So it's a lot of other nuances that he holds to as well. But I'm just letting you know where he come in at on two reasons why he said he left, because of suffering, and I'm gonna discuss on one of these quotes he said, and also the copies, because he understood that the Messiah walked this earth. Some people try to use that. No, see, he never. And when they tell him that, oh, he walked this earth because he's a historian, he go by what he go by. And now, I'm not saying he didn't walk this earth. He just saying that he don't hold to the very things he said. That's why the book called a misquoting of who? Jesus. You mind reading this right here?
Yes, sir. Historians try to reconstruct what probably happened in the past on the basis of data that can be examined and evaluated by every interested observer of every persuasion. Access to these data does not depend on presumptions, all right, or beliefs about Elohim. This means that historians, have no privileged access to what happened in the supernatural realm. They have access only to what happened in this, or natural world.
Exactly. So, presuppositions or beliefs about Elohim. So he's saying history, like basically saying we can't come with it with our own personal beliefs, preconceived beliefs, right? And this whole thing about historians we can't deal with the supernatural. Like historians got to deal with, they say, we're trying to get facts, all right? So you cannot duplicate a what? A miracle. So that's why I say, and you're going to learn about these so-called, they called it this country the founding fathers, those who wrote the Constitution. One guy that's real heavy this here and these belief here is nothing new. Everybody knows Thomas Jefferson. He wrote his own Bible, the Jefferson Bible. And also a guy by the name of Thomas Paine, who was also an atheist, who helped construct the Constitution of the United States of America. But their whole reasoning is, if it cannot be duplicated, if it's something that's not what they say natural, it didn't happen. Such as, and that's why you say how scary to think about a virgin birth. That's not what? It's not natural. So that can't what? That didn't happen. Walking on water. That's not what? It's not natural. So that means it didn't what? It didn't happen. So that's got their viewpoints on this now. So with him, he tracing back here as well. How can I know this actually happened? Well, I can't put supernatural in the cause of a historian because we got to be able to duplicate this again. So that's where his mindset on that. And I want to say the last one from one of his quotes.
And historians prove that Jesus, Yeshua, was raised from the dead. I always argue that no one can prove it.
Why you think he's saying that? Because he's a what? Historian. Because that's something that was called supernatural, right? That's why he said no. I tell you can't prove that. Go ahead.
Are the gospel accounts of Jesus, Yeshua reliable? No, not completely.
And you're going to understand why we're going to say not completely. Go ahead.
Does the Bible provide an adequate answer on why there is suffering? No, not really.
And the reason this right here, this was a reason why he also caused himself to walk, because of his mindset was this here. When he read the Bible, it's always the Most High say, if you do this, then I would do that. He was passionate about his little essay when he his little debate, and when he did this, his own little viewing on suffering. And he was like, he read the book of Job, and he said Job bothered him so much because it didn't meet the criteria what he thought of this loving. So this is what he quoting, this loving God is. Because he read that if you obey me, then what's going to happen? You're gonna have good. If you disobey me, then what's gonna happen? You're gonna have bad. So basically blessings, and then you have the curses, right? So his mindset was, what about Job? He was so passionate about it. Job did everything right. Why did he have to suffer? Because he was righteous, he was this. So is he just playing games? That was what he was saying. So that bothered him so much where now he started what? Criticizing every little thing it is, because he said, it don't explain to me about suffering. Because if you say, well, disobedience towards the Most High is why people suffer, then he going to point to who? Going to point to Job. Like, explain that. So I'm giving you, this is where a lot of Muslims, it's your first time hearing about him, then just know this guy's he be quoted and got books below that, and a lot of, and I want to introduce you all, if you're first, where you not told that, hey, well, you hear this for the first time, I thought, we had this, now, but his claim to be easily refuted, but it's just like you say, is one thing too, because the very one who we learned from had the same information as well. But that guy died. He died now. Not him. He's still alive. Talking about Mr. Mercer. He died in faith. This one here is a what? An atheist now.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
This man, on the argument about Job,
Mm-hmm.
did he read the first chapter of Job? Did he read that conversation between Most High and Satan? And then know where Job stood and where Most High stood about Job before he began to, bring, say, what is that? I mean, it doesn't, I don't know how he's thinking. If he had read the book of Job and actually understand what the discourse was and understood from the beginning and built on it, he will understand what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not like if you do this, like he's putting it, if you are righteous, you get blessings, like if you sin, you get curses. That's not really what happened there. It's not totally like, if that's, I haven't listened to him before and I haven't read any of his books.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to what the word said here, on that chapter 1, you can see the foundation about what transpired in the book of Job.
Yeah, like for you, with your understanding and how his whole thing about why there is suffering. His whole thing had a debate about why is there suffering in the world, and it said, do the Bible give an adequate answer on why there's suffering? And like I said, this is God's opinion. Like this is where he feel what he felt, because his example was Job, and he went through where you look at Job. Job was someone that shouldn't suffer the way, because he was what? So that's, now most definitely we understand it's bigger than just Job.
Exactly. I mean,
But I'm just going where just because somebody got a PhD behind their name, just because somebody got this here, just know that we're not gonna be that duped on certain things. But I'm letting you know how easily people listen and then by the droves move around, because certain things what they say, kind of like certain, you can kind of see it in them, certain teachers, certain pastors, or my pastor said, or when you actually search it out yourself, and we advise everyone to study, to make sure, you stand on what you hold to. I'm just giving out where someone like this is being used greatly by the enemy, Satan, getting a lot of people to turn from the faith.
And I guess what he was alluding to, Job really does follow his philosophy in a way, because he was basically saying Job lived a righteous life. And because he lived a righteous life, he was blessed. So his philosophy is, if you live a righteous life, you're gonna be blessed. But the point I guess he didn't understand is that when Satan went to him, he says the only reason why Job is worshiping you
exactly. That's what
is because you're blessing him, right? And Hasatan, so if he really understood Job, it fits his philosophy, because he said the only reason why he's worshiping you because you're blessing him, right? Because he's living a righteous life. You take that away,
he's gonna be actually.
So let's see if
That's what he did.
Right.
He's
So,
like,
Yeah, and like you say, just the mindset when he talking about, are they just playing games? We're talking about the Most High and the enemy. Like, well, so but that's again, we're gonna deal with some of his ways, and not only just his ways, a lot of things around as well. Because again, there's nothing new underneath the sun. Remember, Satan going to attack the word from the very beginning. We read a couple weeks ago. Remember Genesis 3. Has Elohim said, want you to doubt what? Once you doubt the word, he got you, right? That's what my whole thing, I try to get in people's head, I used to play. once I let you lose that confidence, I know your game ain't gonna be about it, but I know Joe can testify to that as well. All right, let's look at this, Psalms 12, verses 6 through 7.
Psalm chapter 12, verse 6. The words of Yahuwah are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
Thou shalt keep them, O Yah, thou shalt preserve them from this generation forever.
Exactly, and we saw that word preserve is H5341, not saw, to guard, to watch, over, keep, to be kept close. He gonna preserve his word. Just know that. That's why we read a couple way about it. You gotta have faith in him, knowing who he is, because he's not someone as a human being limited. He called the end from when? From the beginning. So he already know what tomorrow gonna bring. None of us in this room know what tomorrow gonna bring, right? He already knew this coronavirus thing gonna come out in 2019, right? It was before that, because you look on the Lysol thing, it's already talking about human coronavirus already before. But, you know, just what the media portray to people. This was a point where we saw where Mr. Urban is dealing with textual criticism. This is a format where we dealing with where he said those thousands of places, all these copies, and they different in thousands of places. This is where he referring to right here. Textual criticism.
Textual criticism is a branch of textual scholarship, philology, and literally criticism.
Yeah. You want that's better for me, but I'm on the angle here.
Good. That is concerned with the identification of textual variants or different versions of either manuscripts or printed books.
Yes.
This means that unintentional alterations were common when copying manuscripts by hand.
And remember we talked about last time, what are manuscripts? Things that are actually written with your hand, right? So these are things before the printing press. Anything printed is not longer a what? It's not a manuscript, all right? Go ahead.
Over the 5,000 different manuscripts of the apostles' writings, so-called New Testament, there are estimated 200,000 textual variances.
So that's what we're looking at, over 200,000 textual variances. Over 200,000. He said, man, that's a whole lot. Right? And you talking about over 5,000 different manuscripts. This just in the Greek. And to get us think about all where we look at the classical writing, like the Greco-Roman. When you look at Homer, the Iliad of Homer, right? Socrates, you're looking at Aristotle, you're looking at Alexander, you're looking at all these history type lessons. If you compare, get all their information, get all their copies thousands of years later, because you realize that we don't have no original copies of those either. We just got copies, and these copies, person lived in the 300 BC, we talking about 1200 is the earliest copy that we have. So let you see, we talking about a long time gap. But you think about it, if you just can get all the information from everyone in that Greco-Roman, you're talking about 4 feet worth of material. 4 feet. You get all the apostles writing, all those different manuscripts, you're talking about something going over a mile high. I know you see the comparison on how much information that we got years later. Anybody know when Paul kind of did his writings?
70 AD.
Yeah, a little bit before 70 AD, right? 70 AD. So he started like around, feel like just 20, 30 years after the death of the Messiah. And Paul is interesting because a lot of these agnostics, even that guy with Mr. Herman, they can't wrap their finger around Paul. He's like a thorn to their side. Because they look at all them gospels, you know, they all the same, you know, they got these little ones, Q, we got all these here. But Paul, he's unique. Because everybody know Paul coming out of a personal as well, and he's talking about give greetings to this, and we're going to discuss certain these things with Paul, and they realize, man, this is not a joke with Paul. So the Most High put that nugget there for a reason, right? And while we say over 5,000, and guess what? They find in manuscripts yearly as we speak, because here at this time when I put this down, it was just over 5,000, still over 5,000, but they only had 200,000. But look at this here. This is what they mean by
Estimated 140,138, 162,000 words in the apostles' writings, so-called New Testament.
So that's saying all the words in the so-called apostles' writing is equivalent around 140,000 words. Exactly, they say 138,162 words in the so-called apostles' writing. That's how many words. Now, how many variances?
400,000 of variants.
400,000 variants. And we talking about it's more variants than there actually what? Of them. So that's why you see Mr. Berman like, man, but let me tell you how something so minute, what he don't tell you, is what we're going to get to as well.
Over 5,800 manuscripts, MSS in Greek.
So remember I told you from the other week, when you say that MSS, that's just a what? Abbreviated for manuscripts. MS is just singular. MSS is plural. Go ahead.
Estimated 10,000 manuscripts, MSS in Latin.
Mm-hmm.
Estimated 9,300 manuscripts, MSS in other languages, such as Syriac, Slavic, Gothic, Ethiopic, Coptic, and Armenian.
So think about it. We're talking about almost 20,000 some manuscripts. Now think about this here. I don't know, you got your phone. And when they say textual variances, we talked about last time. A textual variance is if you may see, if it say a dog, and the other may say and dog. That's a textual what? It's a textual variance. No matter how, that's a textual. Or it may say, how they did then, they say D Joseph, D Mary. We don't say that, right? We just say Joseph and what? Mary. But you have thousands of these say D Joseph, and the other just say Joseph. That's a what? That's a variance. So like do the math right quick. If you look at, say 5,800, you're just dealing with just the Greek alone. Just the Greek. We're not even talking about the Latin. They got over 10,000 manuscripts. And these others, let's look at just the Greek. If we do 5,800, say we looking at, if you're looking at, say, each manuscript may have 80 different variances. One may say a, other may say a misspell of a name. What's the math on that? What's 5,800 times 80?
464,000.
464,000? Wow. You see that? Something so minute can add up. So don't make you see that number there like it's a big old. We talking about something still what small. Look at all these manuscripts we talking about. So I want y'all to keep that in your mindset, because when they come at you with these type things here, well, y'all got different variances. We're gonna see how serious they are, or is it serious at all?
All right, quality of variance. What kind of variance are there? 99% of variance make virtually no difference at all.
So basically, because like you say, most of them are in this. Mr. Army can tell you that as well. Most of them don't make a difference at all. You're dealing with what the main one is, as you're gonna see, spelling. As we talked about Nebuchadnezzar and Nebuchadrezzar, right? When we saw that, you're dealing with spelling.
That's right.
You may, and you know, they didn't have dictionaries and describe now. Like I said, they can write the same name. We saw that same chapter, misspelled a name right there. So it wasn't about, spelling wasn't the main thing on that end there. Go ahead.
Spelling is the main variance of apostles' writing.
99% of them of the variances due to the point of spelling. Only less than 1% is what?
Of variance are meaningful and viable.
And for example, this here, like, it's actually can be like authentic, and it can change a little what they say meaning on something. But the core of we knowing, like say the resurrection, the virgin birth, the death, burial, none of that has changed. That's any copy you see, all that's gonna be the same. When I say meaningful, kind of like you look at, can you go to John chapter 7, and I got this later on as well. John chapter 7, and look at verse 3.
John chapter 7, verse 3. His brethren therefore said unto him, Depart hence and go into Judea, that thy disciples also may see the works that thou doest.
And it's just one manuscript say on this less than 1%, it don't have, it says brother and what? And sisters. And sisters. Now does that change some of that so dramatically right there? No. But somebody want to make a point, well, I mean, well, you know, it just, as we recognize too, sometimes it may, even in different gospel account, one may say two, you know, talk about the two, I'm just talking about just one. They don't change the story of the lineup. Now, something that they saying that it's going to be later on, in Revelation 13, verse 18, we kind of heard of the 666, the number of the what? The beast, right? Everybody? Now, a couple manuscripts, and it's saying it's kind of, because not older don't always, and that's what we're going to talk about another time. We're going to talk about the Vaticanus, the Vaticanus and the Sinaiticus. Those two are they the oldest versions of the so-called New Testament, of the Apostle writing. All the rest of them going to kind of go after that. So when we see most of if you look at the NIV, your modern day translators of the Bible, they all deal with the Sinaiticus and the Vaticanus. That's where their source is. When we say the majority text, that's where you see your King James, the ones that's before them, that's what they use right there. So they say these couple manuscripts in Revelation 13, verse 18, instead of 666, it has 616. 616. Now think about how much literature had to be thrown in the trash if we start talking about it's 616, not 666. Now somebody said, well, you know, that could be but all in all, is that the core of our faith? So these are things here, but you know, and then others you may see 666, but that's just showing that's the less than 1% of the variance that we're dealing with right there. That may have some type of meaning can construe or have some type of viable type things. Other than that, 99% of our variance is just dealing with spelling. We're talking about a codex, right?
All right, codex, plural, codices, is a book constructed of a number of sheets of paper, vellum, papyrus, or similar materials. The term is now usually only used to describe manuscript books with handwritten content.
And I'll put this in, because when you see a codex, you know exactly what I'm talking about when you say a codex. It's just something that's vellum or papyrus or similar materials, things that's written on, they wrote on leaves, papyrus plants. And them, like you get any leaves, they what? They deteriorate, right? Yeah. Vellum it can last a little longer. That's what you see the Sinaiticus and the Vaticanus, those written on vellum. That's why they can be preserved a little longer. All right?
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I know for the Dead Sea Scrolls, when they talk about fragments, they were written on leather, right?
Yeah, kind of like that little.
So would that be on the codex too also?
Yeah, that'd be on that. Those would be the same thing. Anything is constructed on that and it got some type of binding, because we the first one, the codex was usually kind of see back and forth. They wrote back and forth on those as well. Anybody heard of Dan Brown? Another, remember this thing called the Da Vinci Code? Right? Same thing. It's just people taking things without understanding who don't have it. You don't search it out, you would take what they saying is true. Something like you see with Bart Ehrman. But when you search things out, you see how big of a lie it really is. Right? Dan Brown.
Dan Brown, author of the novel, The Da Vinci Code.
And I just put this here, and this little thing here, this character by the name of Tevin declared this here. And Dan Brown actually believed this to the fullest. That's why he went and declared it himself.
Tevin declared, until that moment in history, Jesus Yeshua viewed by his followers as a mortal prophet, a great and powerful man, but a man nonetheless.
So that's why I'm saying this was a very quote. So basically he's saying until that moment in history, that moment in history talking about is the council of what?
Nice.
Council of Nicaea, because he's saying that's where Constantine made the Messiah deity. They happened in 325 AD. And we know the Council of Nicaea wasn't about making him, it was dealing with mostly people called the what? Trinity.
Yeah.
But when you don't have that understanding, you're going to say, well, he's just a man nonetheless, nothing more. But when you find this right here, when we start talking about these biblical manuscripts, these codexes, and this codex here, and you may see P. P just stands for what is written on. It's written on what? Papyrus. So that's why they put P. 66 is where it's stored at. So you may see, like you say, the Dead Sea Scrolls. You may see certain things, what is written on, and what order do they store it on. So P66, can you read about this manuscript right here?
The manuscripts contained in John chapter 1, verse 1 through 6, 11, 6, verse 35b, 14, verse 26, 29 through 30, 15, 2 through 26, 16, 2 through 4, 6 through 7. Chapter 16, verse 10 through 20, 20, and 22 through 23. Chapter 20, verse 25 through 21. Right?
Yeah, you do it. And chapter 12, chapter 17.
17.
And remember again, this got different leaves, all, little funnel leaves is just a binding of these leaves. So that's why he said that when they get these here, these codices, they got these in, they preserved, and you can read that part right there.
It is one of the oldest, well-preserved New Testament manuscripts known to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Its original editor assigned the codex to the early 3rd century, or around AD 200, on the basis of the style of handwriting in the codex. Herbert Hunger later claimed that the handwriting should be dated to an earlier period in the middle of early part of the 2nd century.
So Herbert Hunger said it should have been around 150 AD, middle of the 2nd century, 3rd century. So we start seeing these here, when we see the middle part of the 2nd century, and we see that this here, this is John 1. Now, I can't read this Greek right here, but actually this is John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with, and the Word was. Yeah. So now, if this Dan Brown is talking about this at the moment where he was made deity, what about this was 150 some years before the Council of Nicaea? This same John 1 is the same John 1 we have today. And we have some even predate this here, but remember they got these people here who they go by handwriting styles, and these scholars who say, well, it was written around this time. It was written around this time. So I want you to see this is called P66, which is one of the known earliest manuscripts that it has John 1:1 in the beginning was the Word. So there's, I already knew that the Messiah was what? Before he wanted to help create this world.
Yeah. And just to add to that, because I did a study a while back on this.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do, they determine 2 ways. One, the type of parchment paper. They can determine, what year sort of around what year, and then also the ink itself. So they examine the ink and determine, based on the texture or what they use for the ink, to say where they got it from and what century that ink was in.
Yeah, so you got little tools and what's been, like how we know you try to write some old, because some of them, he would try to make something up. You put an Apple phone right there, we know this couldn't be no 2nd century, right? And we know that's flavor.
Yeah, but how do you determine, how do they determine the kind of ink? And, you know, okay, what is prevalent at the time? You know, they want to.
Yeah, so like for
as a
example,
was written.
like the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example, the fragments that they pulled, like the leather that was written on, they can say what year this how far advanced or what century this leather was on. But the ink itself doesn't match up. Like on the Dead Sea Scrolls, the ink itself analysis doesn't match up to the sort of, I guess, the codex or the leather. So they say that even the ink, it might not have been written on the date or when they dated back so far.
Okay, so what do they use to determine the time?
They use all technology to do that.
What, carbon dating? Or I mean, what where?
I don't know, like the stuff that we use in our ink today, like the material that makes up the ink, they can say, oh, this is like this century ink versus some ink that was used back in the days. They use this, so they can say, oh, the materials that make up this ink was used in this century.
And also you have, they say, style of handwriting. Unification, like using everything was blocked. You can tell things was everything capitalized and was blocked. We know that, say for example, those was written, that's before. Those how things was written way earlier than you talking about things in AD, this time frame. So it kind of like you see something that got vowel points on them, and they found some with vowel points. What we know we talking about now, that's like 5 to 10th century right there, because one of those vowel points win at this time frame. That's what style of handwriting. Also, we understand that, like you're saying, certain what they was using at the time. Like right now, we know we don't use papyrus to write on things now, right? But when that time frame then, when you see that certain things being used, well, these things are only used during these certain time periods. And so that's how they kind of measure what time period are they dealing with here. Because usually, like we're saying, these codexes, these things when they start binding, I don't know, it said that even the binding was still kind of there as well. Well, they didn't start binding things to a certain century as well. So that's how you kind of see, okay, this is the time frame that we're looking at right here. So that's why I say writing style make a big difference too.
Okay, so we have one question. Chindu was asking, so question, when the Messiah was on earth, do you hold that he was fully man as far as his deity or Elohim man? Question. Man as in leaving his majesty, glory, power on high in heaven. I'm not quite sure if I'm just reading how you wrote it. It's in the text, but when the Messiah was on earth, do you hold that he was fully a man as far as his deity or Elohim a man?
Well, I hold that he was, he left his glory, due to one of his glory, that he can, for that body that was prepared, but he still knew where he came from. He still knew.
I'm looking at it, I think it's going back to Bart, when you said that the guy Bart, right, believed that he walked the earth.
Yeah.
And so does he mean he was just...
Yeah, well, that's why they're going. Remember, Bart don't hold to the miracles. So exactly. So he feel like that's why they say misquoting the things that he say he did. They look at him, boy, he just was a guy that they wrote about, but he wasn't basically doing these miracles, because he hold that can't be proven. Let's look at examples of time frame, like you said about different things and what time frame people lived at, and when you start, that's why I say Paul is a good example on these things here. Look at Acts 26 verses 1 through 3.
All right, Acts 26 verse 1. Then Agrippa said unto Paul, Thou art permitted to speak for thyself. Then Paul stretched forth the hand and answered for himself.
So we talking about Agrippa, right? We know you got Agrippa 1, you got a different Agrippa. Agrippa is a son of who? You might have heard of Herod, right? And then he also had a sister. What do you think his sister's name? Bernice? Berenice, that was his sister. And kind of when we start seeing this history with Agrippa and his sister, that's where you kind of see, well, when now we're looking at with Agrippa and Paul, well, they're in the same time frame together. You know, we know they was what? They was 2nd century. That's how you kind of label to start seeing when things go. When you look at biblical things, and you also see at other sources outside the Bible. Go ahead.
I think myself happy, King Agrippa, because I shall answer for myself this day before thee, touching all the things whereof I am accused of the Jews, especially because I know thee to be an expert in all customs and questions which are among the Jews. Wherefore, I beseech thee to hear me patiently.
So that's why I want to show you that right there, where Agrippa, Bernice, Paul, they was in the same what? The same time frame, right there. Anybody heard of Nero? Right? So we can tell with Nero, when Paul, when he said, I want to go to Rome, who we think now was the emperor at that time, and Paul wanted to say, I want to go to Rome to clear my case.
That's Nero.
He was Nero, because he was the emperor during this time frame. He the one set Agrippa up to be where he was. That's how you kind of see the history on things and making sure things line up as well.
In 55,
That'd be 55 AD.
the Emperor Nero added to Agrippa's realm the cities of Tiberias and Taricae in Galilee, and Livius with 14 villages near it in Perea. It was before Agrippa and his sister Bernice that, according to the New Testament, Paul the Apostle pleaded his case at Caesarea Maritima, possibly in 59.
So we kind of see that. So that's why we know in Paul, we do know he died before AD 70, because Paul didn't speak about the what? The destruction of the temple. Right. So we do see this time frame what we're looking at, right? About living with Nero.
Nero, AD 37 through 68.
So that's when he was born in AD 37. He died in 68. All right, go ahead.
Became emperor of the Roman Empire after the death of his adopted father, the Emperor Claudius, in AD 54. The last ruler of what historians call the Julio-Claudian dynasty. He ruled until he committed suicide in June AD 68. Same man accounted for killing his mother, first wife, and second wife, burnt Rome, and blamed Christians.
Man, what type of dude he was?
That's mischievous, man. I mean, he was called. He was
just 31 years old. He became. They started training him at 17 to be what he is. And when his dad got murdered, his mom kind of took over the affairs, and him and his mom started. And they tried to claim that his mom was going to kill him, so he had to kill her first. But
you know the word you used to there for toilet commode. Okay, commode. You see, that's the name of it. That's what they gave Nero because of the way he behaves and the way he thinks. He was called Commodus.
So we just see the time frame. So now, if someone say with Nero, we know if you say, well, you know, he was in the 3rd century, we know that'll be what? That'll be flawed right there. Nero lived in which century? In the 1st century. Okay. And do we understand how centuries work? Because sometimes, when I got it, I used to be like, man, centuries work like this here. 1st century is everything from 1 to 90 to basically 100. So 1 to 100 is the 1st century. Got that? So the year 101 is considered what? 2nd century. So 101 to the year 200, that's 2nd century. 201 is considered what? 3rd century. I want you to see that's how century. So what century are we in today?
21st.
We're in the 21st century. All right. So in 1999. That was the what? 20th century. When the year 2000 came, that was the end of the 20th century. So 2001, when my daughter was born, She was in the year, so we say she was born in now the 21st century. You got that?
Manuscripts. And manuscripts is a handwritten document, not one that is typed or printed. The word manuscript is often abbreviated as MS or MS singular, and MSS or MSS plural.
Just want to bring that back to you to show now. Let's look at some things what we talked about with textual variances, and we were saying about how things going to be different on what they are, but don't change any meaning whatsoever with the scripture. John chapter 6, verse 58.
John chapter 6, verse 58. This is that bread which came down from heaven, not as your fathers did eat manna and are dead. He that eateth of this bread shall live forever.
So I said here, some earlier manuscript does not have manna. They don't have, some even got the bread, don't have the bread. So it says, not as your fathers did eat and are dead. Don't have that manna right there. Does that change the whole thing on it? Look at John 6:59.
Verse 59. These things he said in the synagogue as he taught in Capernaum.
So some later manuscripts have, it would have Yusuf there, but we just say it has Yeshua. So it said these things said Yeshua or Yusuf, so we can translate in the synagogue as he taught. Instead of he, it has these, but all in all, it's still a what? It's a variance. You know what I'm saying? But does that variance change anything? No. But when you come from boy, oh man, it got over 400,000 bits. Remember, it's nothing serious at all. All right. Another example.
John chapter 7, verse 1. After these things, Yeshua walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry because the Jews sought to kill him.
So instead of Jews, some early men got Judeans. They don't got Jews, they got Judeans. That's considered a what? A variance. Does it hold any weight whatsoever? No. But all in all, it's still a what? Still a variance. And we already talked about this one right here, his brother, and also said someone's got sisters. All right? It's a last one on these different ones. John 7, verse 15.
Verse 15. And the Jews marveled, saying, how knoweth this man letters, having never learned?
And some instead of saying knowing this man letters, it said has learning. How he has learning, right? Now we're knowing this man letters. Again, does that change the context of what we're dealing with at this time here? Not at all. But all in all, it's still a variance. You got to get that account. You got to say that's still a variance, right? So I want you to see, when they try to make these variants, you see this Bart Ehrman, oh man, they got these variances. These copies. How do you know this copy? When we put all these together, guess what? We can see the intent and how you can find out what the original said.
Yeah, but I mean, like we see the Judeans and the Jews there as, they call it variants.
Oh, wait, hold.
The message there did not change. Okay, you're looking at here, okay, if you come to this country, the word color, and go to England, you see the same word color. They are not the same. They are variants. This one is C-O-L-O-R, the other one is C-O-L-O-U-R. But it's the same, wherever you see them, you know,
yes,
it's the same message.
Yes. And that's the main point where I want us to realize, when you make something so big, you're like, oh man, but you really can bring it down to see how small it really is. And that's the whole thing. But like, kind of like you see, not putting nothing towards anything, when you see something, oh man, people start panicking right off. When you really look at it and you break it down, you realize that's not really that. It's minute as what it is. Let's look at another example right here. As Brother Gabriel discussed, we talked about a couple weeks ago, and we I was saying this is going to be what I told you, going to be on another, or that won't be on part 2. Got another part of this as well, but we're going to discuss that who the one control language in the first place? Right? So it's somehow we like language is like just a shock to him. Like it's gonna be like, oh man, I know they were gonna do that. Look at Genesis 11 verses 6.
Genesis chapter 11, verse 6. And Yahuwah said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech.
Let me ask y'all something. Do y'all can go everywhere in this country, in this world, and go say, I understand what everybody's saying. They start speaking their native tongue? No. Some of us, we can't do that right here in this country. Right? So we understand this ain't nothing new. It wasn't nothing new with him at this time here, and it's still been going on today. I'm like, man, I don't have a clue what you're talking about.
But again, he understands all of it.
We
Because
know.
when I pray at home, I don't pray in English. I pray in my mother online.
Yeah.
That's how I say, hey God. See, when I go, I say, I call him what I call him in my language. He knows that. That's his name.
Exactly.
So if anybody hears me, you will say, what is he talking about?
Mhm.
But
Yeah, you know, yeah. And that's why I say in Hebrews 11 verse 6, you got to know that he is who he is. We talking about the one that what? Controlled and wrote everything.
that's right.
Keep going.
Verse 8. So Yahuwah scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth. And they left off to build the city.
Mhm.
Verse 9. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because Yahuwah did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did Yahuwah scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth.
Who scattered them? Yeah, right. And that's where you kind of see where we are, and the Most High already know this as well. So when you see certain things and what it be, His plan, His will is beyond our understanding on why things the way they are.
Yeah, I got a question on that very thing that was discussed at this point. You know, when they started to multiply, humankind was instructed by Yah to go to separate ways, but they refused. They got that place. So for them not to go like they were instructed was why this language variances came in. For them, because they didn't want to do it. If you read that very well from the beginning, you see that they were told to go to do their different cities, but they decided to stay at a place because they said that they didn't trust God.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't trust, the Most High. They didn't trust Him. So they decided to stay. They said, okay, well, now, since they didn't want to do this, okay, now that their languages are, understand each other or one another, let's see what they will do. Then that happened, then the language confusion forced them to, move apart from each other.
I get you saying that. I can look at it on two different ways, but you're saying that they was commanded to go to their spots.
From the beginning, before this is verse chapter 11. Yeah, if you read this, you can see from chapter 6 coming down to this chapter 11, you can see the instruction of God, Most High there. But they refused. It was just like, disobedience.
And I look at that more in detail.
Yeah,
Seeing more on.
You gotta look into the flood that just.
The flood.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at more.
Yeah, and then in the book, are you familiar with the book of Jasher? I think it'll be probably chapter 8 or 9. It speaks a little bit more about this. And basically, they were building a tower to survive the flood.
Exactly.
Another flood came.
Because
so they should scatter and multiply. So because he confounded their language.
So he was happy to go scatter, okay, but they refused.
Correct. They just stayed in one place.
They didn't, because they said they didn't trust God. That's why they built him that in case if we scatter now, it's going to bring another flood, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Okay, see what I mean?
Yeah.
So cute.
And a superscription also was written over him in letters of Greek and Latin and Hebrew. This is the King of the Jews.
Okay, now this is in Luke, and this is what was written, this superscription, right? Now, this superscription was written, so who wrote it? Was it an angel or a human? It was a human, right? Somebody wrote this here, and they wrote it in how many languages?
3.
3 languages. Good job. In Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. And they what? This is the King of the Jews, right? This is, we know it wasn't looking like that, because this is what we call English, right? But this is what it was written, but we can, so now this is nothing new. Languages was going to be, things going to be copied, and it's going to be what? Handed out in different languages. Because why? Don't everybody speak the same what? Language. That stopped back in Genesis. Right? That was after the flood. Now we all don't speak the same what? Language. Some people speak more than one language, right? But we understand that, hey, we all don't speak the same language. It was even going on that time right there. Look at some more examples of this here. There we go. Acts 21, verses 37 through 40.
Acts chapter 21, verse 37. And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, May I speak unto thee? Who said, Canst thou speak Greek?
Okay, because why? This captain, he's a what? He's a Greek, or what we say, working for the Rome, right? Red Roman. So he asking him, you speak Greek? Right? Go ahead.
Art not thou that Egyptian which before these days made us in an uproar and led us out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers?
Now he was an Egyptian, that's another subject. Go ahead.
Verse 39. But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city in Sicilia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people. So
what is Paul speaking right now?
He's speaking Greek.
He's speaking Greek to this individual, right? Another person understand he's speaking Greek to him, right?
That's right.
Okay, verse 40.
And when he had given him license, Paul stood on the stairs and beckoned with his hand unto the people. And when there was made a great silence, he spake unto them in the Hebrew tongue.
In the what tongue? In the Hebrew tongue, right? We just see that certain thing. We know Paul, he can speak Hebrew, he can speak Greek. We know other language probably, because like he said in Corinthians, like, I speak tongues more than you all. So we know he spoke multiple languages, right? Because he was used a vessel to do what? To the Gentiles, right?
That's right.
Revelation 9, verse 11.
Revelation chapter 9, verse 11. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue was Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue had his name Apollyon.
Let me ask you a question. Would this be a textual variance?
Yep.
Right? Because why? We talking about, man, it's different. You got this here, you got, so we know certain things that we use, we understand that, well, in the Hebrew tongue it's Abaddon. In the Greek tongue it's, so we talking about the same thing, right? Like how you say father in Spanish?
Madre. Madre.
Papa?
No,
Somebody say
madre.
padre? Well, you said
It's like padre.
padre?
Yeah, it's like
There you go, padre. There you go.
Yeah.
Good.
The Spanish.
Good.
I was thinking.
All right. So, but then if we say, and how you say it in English?
Dad.
Father, right? Right? Now what about say daddy?
Same thing.
Same thing though, right? But somebody say, man, hold on, man. It's father. No, it's daddy. It's father. It's daddy. We talking about the same thing right
It's
here.
actually Papa too.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Papa, different things, right? So this title here, this name here, Abaddon and Apollyon, we talking about two different languages, but we talking about the same what?
Same thing.
The same thing right here, right? So this ain't nothing. Somebody, you got to know the Hebrew on it. Well, you got to know this here on it. No. What I do need to know is the core of what the Most High already instructed, because he can what? He's powerful enough to put things in my own what? My own language. Where I can look. Remember, he said he's going to preserve his word. So we got to understand, we know at this time here, we just read it, what was being spoken even that time there? Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. Now you had other languages going on at that time as well, but guess what? That's what he said in that region there, for they all, when they see that right there, they can read it. Some people, they understood the Greek, some people understood on the Latin, some people understood the what? The Hebrew.
Aramaic.
Yeah.
But that's a Semitic tongue that's still dealing with what? So what? Hebrew. The Latin, that's why he said you had over 5,800 manuscripts in the Greek, over 10,000 in Latin. Why so many in Latin? Well, because they spread more to the what? To the west. That's where we get all our what? Our language is based on what? On the Latin, right? So when it's very more towards the west, it's more what? It's more different. So that's where everything can come from that Latin. Who rules in the heavens and on the earth? It's an easy question, right? Most High, right? Did the Gentiles know that?
Of course, they know.
The Gentiles knew?
They know. Yeah, they know. Because there are Gentiles who are already who follow before the message came to them. One of them was Cornelius, right?
Cornelius,
Yeah.
he knew. But what about Cornelius? Said he was already in the synagogues. He was already learning the ways of the Jews, right? Now, when we see what it says about Psalms 96, verse 4 and 5, it says that what? All these Gentiles worship what? They worship idols, right? And if they came in too, and we understand, even from the beginning, the Egyptians, they had to come into the fold, right? When they left out of Egypt, they were worshiping what? Idols, right? If you read that Psalms 96, verse 4 and 5.
Yes, sir. Psalm 96, verse 4.
Mm-hmm.
For Yahuwah is great and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all mighty ones.
Yes.
For all the mighty ones of the nations are idols.
All the mighty ones of the nations are what?
Idols.
All of them are idols. Every single, that's why you chase any other nation other than Israel, all their mighty ones are idols. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. You see their source, it's dealing back what? It's an idol behind that.
But Yahuwah made the heavens.
He the one made the heavens. So he said, who rules in the heavens and on the earth? Let's look at one of these Gentiles who recognize that as well. And let's read it. I'm going to close it out on this right here. Look at Daniel chapter 4, verses 34. We're going to read 34 through 37.
Daniel chapter 4, verse 34.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar. Go ahead.
Lifted up my eyes unto heaven, and my understanding returned unto me. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation.
Who we talking about? Whose kingdom from generation to generation?
Most High.
The Most High. Like there's nothing like, his don't stop, right? He ruled in the heaven. He the one that put people where they are. Everything will be according to, I'm going to let Nebuchadnezzar take. Go ahead.
Verse 35. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing.
As reputed as what?
Nothing.
Go ahead.
And he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth.
So if he want to do something, want to make this nation or this person here do this, what are they going to do it?
Yeah.
He the one, that's why I said, so he said he going to preserve his word. We see how he doing it. We see many ways, different languages, different how it can go out through all. But the word they looking at, because if it's just one copy or something, or would they have any variance? It was just one, like we see Alexander the Great. They buy, like I told him, you know, there's nothing, he lived BC, the first century so-called, and they wrote him about 300 years later. The only known copy was in the 12th century. And most got it from there. So we talking about 1,500 years later when we're dealing with this here. Now, nobody gonna say that he didn't exist though, right? Because you say that hey, we gotta eliminate a whole lot of things. But we recognize if we only have one copy of that, let's say we only have one copy, would that be any variance? No, would be no variance. Because why? Just one copy. Now we had two copies, and say one of them said A, the other one said D. That's one variance right there. Now we got how many copies you said of the so-called apostles' writings? Thousands. That's like 140,000. They got almost 20,000. Now that's how many words they say prescribed in the apostles' writing. 138,162. But we talking about actually maybe like fragments or this and that. We talking about almost dealing with the Greek, with the Latin, and also other languages. We talking about over 20,000 manuscripts. 20,000. So we're not limited to what? To resources, right? And we talking about some that close to, we talking about the first century, because Paul, we know, he wrote just 20, 30 years after the death of the Messiah. We talking about that close in range. Because you go the closer to the original, the more likely what? It's going to be what it is. Yes. And also you look at the majority, not necessarily saying older mean better, because we look at the majority of certain things, what they are, guess what? We can kind of figure out, oh, this is what it said here. That's why you write divine, you see. So the Most High gave us plenty of evidence to see what he said, what was inspired. But guess what? If it's in your heart already that you don't want to follow the Most High, you're going to find any excuse not to what? Not to follow. It's just that simple. Like this guy we just talked about. Did you finish that?
And none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou?
Exactly. Because why? Whose counsel is more brilliant than his? So that's why we know his ways is just outdoing, and we like, wow, look at the Most High. Look at him at his work. Verse 36.
You also had Malachi chapter 1, verse 11, to show that his name will be great in all nations. So that no matter what language it's in, they're going to know who he is.
They're going to know. Daniel 4:36.
Verse 36. At the same time, my reason returned unto me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my honor and brightness returned unto me, and my counselors and princes sought unto me, and I was established in my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added unto me.
Now remember, this is who's talking. This is Nebuchadnezzar, right? Yeah. This is he wasn't even an Israelite, right?
But we know what happened here, right?
Right.
When he was sent into the wilderness for 7 years.
Exactly. There's just a thought. We recognize that who he was, and we know pride got into him, and the Most High had to humble him. That's what he about to say right now, verse 37.
Verse 37. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are true, and his ways judgment, and those that walk in pride he is able to abase.
So this wasn't that he realized that, man, because you got to realize a lot was given to Nebuchadnezzar. It can easily make that man get what? Lifted up.
That's right.
So that's why he's looking at Moses, thinking about Moses. He was used by the Most High. He was what? The most humble person on this. Because think about somebody else, man. You talking about you made the Red Sea split. Ooh, that head gonna be swollen to the foot.
That's right.
Now we're talking about, this is gonna be another part. How can we get to the original? How can we get, because you gotta know things really kind of like some people know we pass over certain things like the chronicle. You see the name, this person, this person, this person, this person. I'm going here. But when you actually study these here, that's how you know, oh man, these people came from here and this person, and it become more interesting. You be like, wow, I want to know the genealogy of this here, see why these people came from here, where these people came from. You kind of see, now when you're reading the scriptures about, you can see the history on things, right? But I do like history. And I kind of like you see here when you understand about the Cold War. Why this country with this country? Why these people here it's a history behind it, right? Philippians 4 verse 3.
Philippians 4, verse 3. And I entreat thee also, true yoke fellow, help those women which labor with me in the good news with Clement, also with other my fellow laborers, whose names are in the book of life.
So we see Clement, right? Clement is someone that Paul was like, you know, he's a fellow laborer with him, right? So when you start saying, well, who is Clement? You know, because this is somebody like he told Timothy. These people live after who? So what happened with them? Did they just what? Did they just stop? Did they get? It's a reason why these things ain't going. We're going to see sources on these. We can kind of see what they're saying and where they're getting taught from and what words are they saying. And that's why you got to rightly divide as well. But these are in the scriptures for a reason. All right. Look at this guy here, and I got a couple more after this here, and that'd be it. But I want to show two things here about what's being said on how, well, Paul let you know who is laborers. These apostles here, and you start seeing they proteges. You're going to see what they saying. We got their quotations. We got over 1 million quotations of these so-called people that was in this first century who understood was in the faith. We have over 1 million quotations on them. What they quoted. Colossians 4, 12 through 14.
Colossians 4, verse 12. Epaphras, who is one of you, a servant of Messiah, saluted you, always laboring fervently for you in prayers, that you may stand perfect and complete in all the will of Elohim.
Epaphras. Who is Epaphras? That is somebody we just know that what? But this person is a servant of who? Of the Messiah, right? He's somebody that labor firmly for you in your prayers, that you may stand perfect. And these things, like you say, these people here, they got a history as well. And we get more into that later on. Go ahead, verse 13.
Verse 13. For I bear him record that he had a great zeal for you, and them that are in Laodicea, and them in Hierapolis. Verse 14. Luke, the beloved physician.
That's how people know Luke was a physician. They go, yeah, who was Luke? Well, he was a physician, right? Some people saying he was a Gentile now, but now you want a Gentile. But go ahead.
And Demas greet you.
So we got Demas greeting you. So we got Luke and Demas, right? Epaphras. These are people working with who?
Paul.
With Paul, right? Fellow laborers with him. Philemon, chapter 1, verse 24.
Verse 24. Marcus, Aristarchus, Demas, Lucas, my fellow laborers.
See, you know, these are my fellow laborers right here, right? But like anybody else, that's why I said we don't get caught up with people. Don't get caught up, because when you're looking at people, easily you can what? You can talk about Paul said, follow me as I follow who? Yeshua. Your job is to follow Yeshua. Because people can go to the left. I mean, you're going to follow right off and you're not following the Messiah. Now, I mean, you've been following man this whole time, right? Like this Bernard Ehrman. He fell off. That's all it is. He got caught up in whatever he got caught up in. Let his own so-called knowledge get the best of him, and thinking that he's something, and he just fell off to the fullest. Like we're going to see about the mosque. He fell off. He was a fellow laborer with the Messiah. Paul greeted him multiple times. He let you know, these are my fellow laborers right here. But like the mosque and like these other people, they know they do it to the what? To the end. So let's see what happened with him. 2 Timothy chapter 4.
My question is on that, those names, right? Lucas and Luke are the same.
Yes, yeah. Luke, you mean like again, that'd be what we call it.
That's another thing, you know, like
Textual variance.
Yeah,
that's another textual
things
variance.
that are not really
Exactly. Not really, exactly. Not really. Go ahead.
2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 10. For Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica.
So what happened to Demas? He did what?
He left.
He left. He forsaken. He said, man, my man, because why? He loved this present world. Man, we don't love this present world. So you can right there be right with that individual doing it. But then guess what? He didn't endure it. Go ahead.
Crescens to Galatia, Titus unto Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Take Mark and bring him with thee, for he is profitable to me for the ministry.
So take who?
Luke.
Take Mark, right? Mark, this is what we call John Mark. This is what people ascribe to Mark, that according to the gospel of who? Mark, all right? Whose certain name, his John, whose surname was Mark. Go ahead.
And Tychicus have I sent to Ephesus. The cloak that I left at Troas with Carpus. When thou comest, bring
So
with thee.
you gotta see, he talking to Timothy. Hey, Tim, don't forget my coat, man. It's cold where I'm at. Don't forget my cloak. Now, there's somebody you can see, that's a personal letter. You see how this going? This is why you say, you can't argue this right here. It's not something that you can, this is Paul. That's why they say they can't. Paul put a thorn to all these people's side because they wish Paul right never existed. Because they can label the Gospels as one of the synoptic Gospels. They can put that out. I mean, that's just these people, they did. But Paul, you know, this is hey, Timothy, don't forget my cloak as well. When you come out, bring that cloak with me. And he also said, bring what? Keep going.
Said, bring with thee and the books.
In the what?
Books.
In the books.
But especially the parchments.
Because he want to do some writing. See, this is what he going to be doing. He said, man, don't forget, hey, bring them books too now, especially them parchments. I'm going to be writing on. So we understand these are the things that's going to be. Y'all using people for his purpose. Not everybody going to what? Going to stay. And that's why he gave this parable right here. And this is the last one. This is the last slide.
Matthew 13.
Verses 5 and 6 and get the meaning. Now this more has dealing with your own as well, but this too can be, how you saw what happened in Bert, that word, he didn't stay on that word. When that persecution came upon, when you saw these little textual variances and you said your doctrine on understanding about suffering and all these things, hey, your lack of understanding caused you to what? Caused you to depart as well. So that's why I say with him, he didn't have that root what? Deep inside. That he had a little twig. It wasn't what? It wasn't rooted. Go ahead.
Verse 5. Some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. Verse 6. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away.
What are you talking about? He's going to explain what these on stony grounds about. Verse 20.
Verse 20. But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is he that heareth the word, and anon with joy received it.
And that's what Bert's saying. That's what made him want to go to Moody. His granddad was a believer, and he wanted to follow that. And he was in Moody, like, man, this is what it is. He was all happy, and he said, "There's one his classmate. He like everything he knew them scriptures. Like he like, man, I want to learn them scriptures like he learned." And he told him, this ain't no game. He said, you gotta live this. And there's not no just a little quiz and say this. He said, I actually live in this. So he said he started devoting his life to it, and then he started seeing these textual criticisms. Started saying, well, but why is it? And then he started doing what? He started doubting. He started saying, man, that root really wasn't. And then instead of just searching it out and seeing, he realized this stuff. He knew himself. This stuff, Manu, who was taught under. These things don't change the core. We talking about the death, burial, and resurrection. We talking about, you know, he walked this earth. You knew that he was. And his mindset is like, well, if he walked this earth and so much history written about him, because he contradicted himself 100 times as well. I'm trying to tell y'all that. On one point where there's no history about him, and then, it's so much written about him. Anybody don't believe he walked this earth, it falls flat. Which one is it? But go ahead, verse
21.
21.
Yet hath he not root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended.
And we see that's what happened with him as well. And we also saw with Demas, he was one that was, his seed fell on what type of ground? Remember, on thorns. Because they say the deceitfulness of riches did what? It choked the word. And he said that he had this present world, the good as present world. So again, we got many factors out there that are going to try to get you from following this truth. Don't let these things here, or somebody say, well, y'all don't have the original. How y'all know this here? How you know this here? Because you got to say, I know who the Most High is. I know he's faithful. I know he able to do what? he can preserve anything and everything he chooses. There's no one more powerful than him. My faith in him cannot be altered, can't be changed, can't be anything. That's how you're able to withdraw all these little attacks on the very sword of the Most High. That's able to do what? Destroy all strongholds that goes against him. Oh, that was just something. There's so much evidence in manuscript preserved and the we got over 1,000 things in manuscript. I just gave an example like
no other Greco-Roman MSS can compare. For example, there are only 3 MSS of the biography of Alexander the Great. Oldest copy is 1200 AD, over 1500 years of his existence, according to a New Testament scholar, Mr. Wallace.
So I just said, this is what it go in, and I realized that, like, man, that is true. You just brought out yourself. What about all the other Greco-Roman things? It gonna hold up because why? They don't have nothing, no original itself. And they what? Talking about Alexander the Great, we know only so much of him because it was written on this one person. No one had nothing of him that century when he was alive. But we got just 30 years after from Apostle Paul from that standpoint there. Any questions?
Comments?
Any comments?
Yeah, from here now, that belief was said, always said, is still falling apart.
I'm sorry, say it again?
Believe, some people that teach once said, always said, it's still falling apart. Because we see that demons, we see demons fall apart. But let it go.
Remember, once saved, but we said you can't lose your what? You can't lose your salvation. It's the difference. Once saved, not always saved. Israel what? They got after they can't lose. We can't take back what he did for them. But he said what? They didn't do it. They didn't what? In faith. That's why the Most High destroyed them. So yeah, there's not one saved, always saved. You're absolutely right. You understand that, Brother Gabriel? Yeah, you got what I want to say.
Use the boss as an example.
Hey, that's how I use it. On that one save, always save message, that's who I use the most. Any other comments? Any questions? Well, thank you all for your time. Hope you learned.
Appreciate Brother Gerald. All right, a couple of announcements before we pray out. So next Sabbath, y'all willing, we're going to have a baptism immediately after service like we used to do.
Hallelujah.
So it's going to be, so Brother Brandon and Sister Jasmine. So they're going to be doing 2 things. So they're going to we're going to have a wedding, marriage, and a baptism of the whole family. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
And then for registration for the Passover, make sure we get registration so we can know how many is going to attend. So we can order the food, get everything up and running. So you can do everything from the website, right?
Yeah.
Registration through the website and also payment through the website too? Right.
Through the Eventbrite.
Eventbrite, so you
Yeah.
can get an invite to the Passover. That's it. You got any more? No? Okay.
Not this week.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and pray out. Face Jerusalem. We're going to do Matthew chapter 6. Pray over the food. And then we'll end it with Numbers chapter 6, the Aaronic blessing. Our Father,
which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, as we give our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever.
Father Elohim, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for your word. And we also thank you for the food. For we know that you are the source and provider of all. And as we eat according to your will, we ask that you remove any impurities that may harm us. Numbers chapter 6. May Yah bless thee and keep thee. May Yah make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. May Yah lift up his countenance unto thee and give thee peace. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Thank you for that, Miss Peggy. Yes. Appreciate you, man.
Okay, so now they're doing that.
Have him up for 3 hours reading.
Ken Johnson, congratulations. Aw. Can you say congrats? Oh, she gone.
I think there's a confusion there, and I hear, some members of the church talk about whatever.
We got the same day on there.
Yeah, because I didn't get it. I was like, I did.
Right.
I get the 21st.
As long as it exists.